Clubhouse.
Welcome back to another episode of Pod Clubhouse's coverage of Shogun. This is Tales from the Shogunate, a Shogun companion podcast. This is Paul, joined once again by my superlative cohorts on this adventure, Inez and Gabby.
Hello.
Aye.
See, last night I called them other ones, or maybe it's the night ago before that, but they really took that personally.
No, I liked it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could tell.
I did.
We've been promoted to cohorts. We still are nameless.
Superlative cohorts.
Superlative cohort.
This episode was the 9th one, called Crimson Sky, and I was thinking about that. Crimson Sky was that plan that Toranaga had on his shelf up for a long time for taking down Osaka. And that whole time we had thought that surely meant a military siege of some kind. But Mariko went about it in a completely different way in this episode. Does the title make sense to you with her approach?
I don't know if this was the Crimson Sky that he had in mind, but I think that Crimson Sky is supposed to mean fire and blood, and I think she did prevail there, Paul.
Yeah, there was some of that.
I went into this assuming that Crimson Sky was this big battle where, everything is red, and lots of fire and death all around and just big siege of Osaka Castle. I still ended up with a couple questions that I wanted to pose to you guys about it. Do you still think that Crimson Sky is the battle that we probably are going to see in the finale, or is this specific plan the real long game plan of what Crimson Sky actually is? Like, they said that her survival was key to whatever this stuff is. So was the title a foreshadow, or was it revealing Crimson Sky's true nature?
That's what I was getting at. Like, I was thinking that it was battle oriented, because they said it was their attack plan for Osaka. But in a way, Ishido is Osaka, because that's his town. He runs the place. So by Mariko doing what she does, it's like he loses all kinds of face by having it go down this way, I think. Right. Anyway.
Yeah.
So that's maybe not a military victory, but just about as good in their culture of honor and duty.
Yeah, I think that this is the beginning of the entire plan. Again, Crimson Sky, I think, is supposed to mean like blood and fire. So this is the beginning of that. In next episode, we'll have a continuation of this said plan.
Well, Gabby, let's get on with our brief synopsis. This episode started 14 years ago with Mariko running through a frozen wasteland. I think this is that exile that Buntaro sent her on that I mentioned earlier this season that was never really described in the book, but I think that's where she was. And this is when she meets Father Alvido, and he slides that rosary into her mitts, and she's like, Christianity.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, so that was a flashback, and after the credits, we met with them sailing over, and she confronting Ishido and announcing that she would return back to Edo.
The next day, she tries to do that, and the guards have strict orders not to let her pass. A big fight ensues, and rather than lose any more people, she says, all right, I'll commit seppuku then, rather than be dishonored like this.
Jesus, such a casual way of putting that, but sure. But first, she had to have a combo with her best buddy, Lady Ochiba.
Later that night, it gets to be seppuku time, and just as we're about to do the deed, Ishido stops by and throws their permits on the ground, like, fine, you can go.
He called them disgusting.
We're starting to feel good, and then we find our guy Yabu, and finally, he did it, flip-flopped, worked for Ishido and let those assassins in.
On the worst night ever, this is when Mariko and Blackthorn decide they're going to like each other.
They're finally going to let love flow.
Exactly. But That's also when the ninjas attack.
Yes, and then Crimson Sky began.
What a powerful episode. I can tell you that I knew a lot of this was happening similarly to the book, but that still didn't leave me with like a complete level of certainty that it was going to go down exactly the same as I had read. But when it pretty much did, it was still very dramatic to see how it played out, because I think they made Mariko's sacrifice quite a bit more intentional and dramatic than it was in the book. I know we'll get there, but I'm just saying up front that they did a really fabulous job translating the intent of the author and the story and the characters into this hour of television.
Do you want to elaborate on any of those parallels right now?
For the most part, this story was condensed. The trek to Osaka for Blackthorn, Yabu, and Mariko went down in a very different way. She went by land, they went by sea. Toranaga had granted Blackthorn 200 men, and so they were bringing them around on the boat. But at the end of the day, none of those men mattered anyway. So it just sort of chewed up time in the book that didn't amount to anything. So they were invisible to delete those 200 men. The argument between Ishido and Mariko in front of the other leaders actually went on for pages and pages and pages. You would be proud of Mariko for how relentlessly she stood up to Ishido's demands, that she backed down. It wasn't just like a 2 or 3 volley kind of exchange. It went on for pages and pages, and every which way she could just politely say that she would not refuse her liege lord's commands. She said it dozens of ways.
Right, and I think that's probably true to the historical accuracy because, she did end up historically, the person that she's based on, Mariko's based on, did end up committing seppuku because she was refusing to be taken hostage. So it does absolutely make sense that she'd fight for her life for a little longer than a few lines.
I didn't know that. I did know that her life ended in 1600, so I kind of figured that she wouldn't continue beyond the story, but I didn't know under what conditions she died. So that's interesting to know. And then everything else, like the attack and Yabu's betrayal, if you just imagine all that kind of just taking more time than necessary, then you'd have a pretty good idea of what went down in the book. But I like the way that they condensed it. I like the way that they cut the fat. Did you need to know that Blackthorn had those extra men? Because they didn't come in handy during the fight. It didn't matter. The fight with Mariko leading her entourage out of the castle, that went on longer because she had more men, but it just extended the fight. The result was the same. They still surrendered and turned around, but in the meantime she lost 50 guys instead of 10 guys. Little things like that. But the meat, the core of what they wanted to say in the book translated to what you saw in the TV really well.
Yeah, it was a very effective and efficient storytelling. So yeah, I like now knowing that the story could have been like that. I don't see how anybody could be upset about it not being a direct transposition.
But that's just a little bit further. Plenty happened in this episode right before that. Oh, such a dense, intense, heavy episode.
Oh, well, the Ochiba conversation never happened because, like I mentioned before, they were not connected in the book. It makes for a more dramatic turn in the show to connect them, but they were in the same room maybe once, and it wasn't that big a deal. It's better the way you saw it, but not in the book.
When she came in to have that conversation in the show, what did you think about Lady Ochiba's presence during that whole time?
I was hoping to lean on my superlative cohorts for some translation of the lady dynamics happening here, because there's so much about their rules, their manner, their way that they deal with each other that makes it so hard to freaking read what their intentions are, because it's not totally in their words, and their faces are kept completely flat for the most part, not 100%. So my read on there was just masked. Like their pleasantries that they were exchanging there was subtext there, but I'm afraid to say that I wasn't picking up on the entire message.
Do you think that Yabu actually was expecting Ishido to be happy with Blackthorn and then agree to just let things slide with him? Like to let the Yabu live just because he brought Blackthorn and his cannon skills?
At this point, it seems like he's just rolling dice to see what he gets. And that seems like that also. The way that he flip-flops later, because he's just trying to survive this thing, that totally makes sense that he'd be hoping. But Ishido is smarter than that, right? If he came from the peasantry to become a regent, then he has some concept of when to have dealings out in the open and when not to, I would imagine.
That scene, it was really interesting to me. Actually, in this whole episode, seeing the difference between the men and the women and their presence. This is Mariko's story, absolutely, but it's been a men's tale up until now. And so in this episode, I saw like the curtains or the seas parted ways for Mariko, and it was just the sea of men, and it showed their it was so symbolic because it showed her huge, like magnificent power and strength. And so, when Yabu and Blackthorn walk into that room and talk to Ishido, it's kind of a joke. But then as soon as Mariko comes in, the tone completely changed. Everything was taken seriously. And then sure, she was there and she laid out her plan to leave and be defiant, which is one thing that no people in general, but no one of power either, like would dare to do. Toranaga, also, he didn't show up. He's just using these women by proxy because they are unfortunately always in this internal war, and so they are just the best soldiers. And so for me, when I saw her come in, it was, again, you have these two sides of the same coin dynamic with Lady Ochiba and Mariko. So it was a yin yang. So the more powerful Mariko was, the more submissive Lady Ochiba showed herself. Also in the scene, you had Lady Ochiba with her son, and we know that she's there to protect her son. Her son is behind her. She is being strategic, but obviously she has to let Ishido in order to keep her son safe. And then Mariko, she has a son, but she was standing alone. And so her baby seems to be whatever, I guess, Japan as a whole, right? Whatever Toranaga, her lord's mission is, that's her son. And so in this scene when she gave her poem, while the snow remains veiled in the haze of a cold evening, a lifeless branch, that was definitely symbolic, right? Seeing Lady Ochiba. So I have my ideas of what that meant, but I am curious, Paul or Inez, what kind of significance that held to you guys.
I'm bad at poetry, but I will go out on a limb and suggest that winter is symbolic of death. So
winter is coming.
Yeah.
Oh, is that a GOT thing? Is that a violation of our rules here?
It's just a season thing. But yeah, winter is coming. What is winter though? Is it her death? Is it someone else's death? Is it everyone's death?
At this point, I think she knows it's hers. She's actually kind of, in a way, glad that it's hers, but she knows that it's hers.
And they showed us what a harsh winter looks like in Japan.
Yeah,
it was
good.
Yeah, they showed us that it is completely uninhabitable.
It looked pretty rough.
It was terrible. So maybe, it kind of just made me think about that's what winter, I guess, now looks to me.
And then the lifeless branch, did that hold any significance?
Did I mention I'm bad at poetry?
Inez, are you going to respond?
I'm not going to respond regarding the poetry part. Honestly, this episode had a lot of different layers of things to pick apart and get through. And the poem line itself, I didn't spend a lot of time on because there was just notes coming from all over the place. But right. Gabby, please elaborate.
While the snow remains veiled. So that to me, so yeah, there are three lines that the haze of a cold evening, a lifeless branch. So a lifeless branch. So that just seems like the imagery is just the branch with no leaves, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And so that could be her. That could be her being there, sure. But it could have also been Lady Ochiba. Lady Ochiba cried. So was she crying because she loves Mariko and knew that this was going to happen? Or was she crying because she like feared their doom and their demise? And I have a feeling that nobody thinks that anything's that like Ishido and Lady Ochiba, I think that they don't anticipate their demise. So yeah, sure, maybe Mariko is symbolic of the lifeless branch, but you know, it could have also have been a dig at Lady Ochiba just living through this winter that is like Ishido's hostage situation, and then marrying her, and you know, her future life, right? Like she's going to be alive, but she's going to be existing in this harsh winter as that lifeless branch with her son, and that her son is not going to make it because obviously Ishido is going to kill him and rule. So it could be directed toward Lady Ochiba, but yeah, I also agree that it could also have just been a representation of like herself and her letting Lady Ochiba know that this was going to happen, obviously. The snow remains veiled in the haze of a cold evening. Absolutely. Winter and the changing of seasons, and snow do represent death.
I wonder, with what you were saying there, if we're meant to see both women in the poem, and how Toranaga is openly, Mariko's liege lord, and what is best for him is what she'll do, and that's what happens in this episode. But with Ochiba, her son, not Ishido, but her son, is her North Star, right?
Yeah.
It's making me think of the way the book does end and how unsatisfying that would be from here. And the fact that they pumped up Ochiba in a way just makes me totally wonder if she's not going to put it out on the line for her son. I'm creating a wild theory here. That
what is it?
In some wild and woolly scene next episode, she at least tries to take out Ishido.
Okay, yeah, for her son.
For her son, because Toranaga at that point would be the lesser of two evils for her. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's my guess.
Yeah, we know it's coming. And then she has that conversation with Mariko shortly after. And that conversation, do you think, well, I think that conversation was her, obviously trying to convince Mariko to not follow through with this because, well, actually, no, it could be two reasons, right? It could be one, because she loves Mariko and doesn't want to see that happen. But also number two, I think she knows that it's going to be the complete like destruction of the system that they have there, which means that her son is on the line too.
Right.
And yeah, she said to Mariko that, she didn't recognize her. I don't know. This is so sad just seeing that sister relationship, and, her mentioning how like Mariko was her everything and Mariko was her happiness, and how like that happiness has become like complete death and hatred and everything the opposite, just because of like how defiant, because of how strong she is. And that's just like, she's like a caged dragon or like a caged phoenix. Like you just can't do that to this type of person. And so she did everything she was told, and she did it all right, and it all wronged her. So now it has that same energy in the opposite direction. And so it was very, very powerful, and such an ode to Mariko and like the person that she was like historically. But it was also so sad, right? Like seeing Lady Ochiba talk about like, her son, like mention her son, because earlier Lady Mariko's son kind of disowned her.
Oh, he definitely did. Little bitch.
I mean, maybe that's what's best for him, right? Because he's also just trying to live. But
yeah.
And then Lady Ochiba just saying that to her, what good is your death for your son? that's just really horrible, because we know that Mariko is very nurturing and very loving, and like the way she held any baby, especially like this newborn that was in this episode, in the last episode, when she held that baby and was curious about why Toranaga hadn't seen him. She just has so much love, and it just seems like that love is now just going straight into like the betterment of the country, unfortunately. So that's just a sacrifice that I wish she didn't have to make, and that I didn't have to see her make. But right, it was just, she was built and destined for greater things. It seems like that was the push of this episode, when why they paralleled her and Lady Ochiba. But I mean, what did you guys, I mean, that was a really powerful scene, right? When she walks in and all the men are dead silent. So what did you guys think about that?
What I loved about the scene, I think, is when I really noticed the costume wear. I noticed that her wardrobe was like, I think it was white, and she just had a very strong, regal presence about the clothing that she was wearing here. And then I started paying attention to her clothing throughout the rest of the episode, because you kind of see it go from this big, strong, symbolic portrayal, and then, and then in the end, obviously, she's like in the plain whites. I took like some of that as like the symbolism of like what her trajectory in this episode was going to be. So her coming into that scene and everybody being quiet, and then her imagery so strong, was a really powerful moment. And I think that's what really helped it deliver this critical message and demeanor. So Paul, you said that negotiation in the books from this scene was really long, and I think that now, knowing that that was a big deal, like multiple pages in the book, to this, it just makes me appreciate the writing that much more, because I felt her commanding presence, I felt her delivery, and it was in stark contrast to the Mariko we've been seeing throughout the entire season. We've never seen her deviate from those core manners. So even though Ochiba like says in their conversation later on that she's like just doing but what she's told to do, and I think she does appreciate and understand Mariko and her purpose. She knows what Mariko's deep dedication, because of this like deep repression that she's given herself completely to her purpose at this point, because she's basically just like a shell, and her religion is what helps her keep taking those steps and helps her cope through her day to day. So just kind of all of that together, and then coming back to that particular scene, I was tearing up. I knew from the very opening flashback that this was going to be an episode where Mariko potentially was going to die. I think we talked about it last week, that my predictions for this one was like, oh, I feel like it's going to be a Mariko show, because there's only 2 episodes left, and I don't know that they would put it in the finale. But yeah, so...
In that conversation that she had with Lady Ochiba, gosh, I was crying the whole time. Actually, I was crying in most of this, but when Lady Ochiba says that, like, she asked, how will piercing your heart protect your son? Lady Mariko responded with, accepting death isn't surrender. Flowers are only flowers because they fall. And so Mariko cried when she said that, and Lady Ochiba cried when she said that. And so, they both competed with their poetry when they were young. And so they 100% knew what she was saying, right? Which is that Mariko plans on dying, like no matter what, it's going to happen. However, I want you guys to know that that line, flowers are only flowers because they fall, is actually kind of a part of the real death poem of the person Mariko is based on.
Whoa.
Yeah.
How did you find that out?
I looked all of this up. I was like, I need to know the significance of like flowers blossoming. And that's just one of the first things that it's not one of the first things I found, I think, but it was like the only explanation that wasn't just, other people's interpretations.
Yeah, that was a really beautiful line. And I appreciate you sharing the context of like where that comes from, because that just makes it even more special because yeah, it was this was a gut-wrenching episode. It was heartbreaking from the start, from the opening to closing. And I just at that moment I was just like, you know what? Like this show is going to win so many awards.
I hope so.
I looked it up and it looks like, you know, the original Shogun series from the 80s won a lot of awards in, you know, costume, script, drama, all of this. And I'm like, all right, like I haven't seen the other one, but I'm guessing that this is like 1,000 times even like better and innovative in the storytelling. Man, I cannot wait to see them just like sweep everything.
This might be their year. I think it's going to be a lean year for quality entertainment with the strikes last year.
Yeah. So, right after the blossoming poem that she gave her, right, Mariko responded with life and death are the same. Both can have value and purpose. And once again, in this freaking episode, you just have the opposites. Like, you know, we knew it was coming, but it does make me really upset to know like what's going to happen to Lady Ochiba. Like what's going to be the other side of that coin, and how is it going to rip me into pieces?
You know, she wants to protect her son, and she wants to get her son to get what is supposed to be coming to him under their laws.
Right, and that was her purpose.
Yeah.
Her sole purpose was to go through these horrible things in order to get that heir. It was after the conversation that her son talked to her, which was really sad.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, he let her know, hey, if you're going to do this, I'm tired of being an outcast. So why don't you stop embarrassing me, Mom? You're not my mom anymore situation. I mean, that was such a disrespectful way for me to say that. Yeah, no, I need to be better.
Gabby, I know it's because you're in pain like we are, so we're just trying to layer on some dark humor.
We're just going too far, I feel.
It's too soon. It's way too soon, I know. But yeah, I was also really sad about the son because one, both his parents have been gone this entire time. We only saw him like back in episode 1, and then we've seen his dad almost die, and then Mariko's been gone, and now she's back in. And yeah, his entire upbringing and I'm sure all the people who are caring for him, yeah, they're talking shit about his mom, and that's embarrassing for me because he is a man in this culture, so he's absorbing everything through their lens. So it's not his fault because he's a child whose entire life filter is purely based of what the adults have taught him. So it's not him being an asshole. It's him being like a hurt son. He needs his parents, right? Like as a fundamental human basis. So, and it is really sad because Mariko loves him so much, but she still has to decide between her loyalty to country or loyalty to her son.
Like you were saying, Inez, he has to try to decide where his future's at. He looks very young.
I don't know if he knows how easy it is for all these people to just like kill off lines, you know, like family lines. Is he at an age where he knows that the reality is that this is like a common thing? So maybe he's pissed off because it's not really about embarrassment. It's about that, like, if you do something disgraceful, you're going to get me fucking killed. You know, like, is it that?
Oh, he knows. Because he doesn't have any maternal aunts, uncles, grandparents, or anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he knows more than most. He and Mariko know.
But you're totally right. If everything goes to plan with Ishido, then Toranaga will ride up with his top guys, of which Buntaro is one. So then why wouldn't Buntaro's son be part of that line that could get told to kill themselves?
And honestly, I thought about it at the end there when Mariko did her ultimate sacrifice, as if she saw it as an opportunity for her to fulfill what Toranaga wanted, but also her death is very clearly a murder. So she cannot be disgraced through her son's eyes. You know, because on paper, legally, she had permits to leave.
They call them shinobi, but they also call them ninja. Like, I think, Gabby, you watched the Netflix thing, and they were called that because they were from Ninji. It's kind of interesting because, like, we have in modern times some amount of ideas of what ninja are. We have the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which popularized this thing. Anime makes ninjas seem pretty cool, but apparently at the time, ninjas were like the lowest of the low kind of assassins that you could hire. You were like really a piece of shit if you hired ninjas to do your dirty work.
They are the ultimate assassins, like lowest of the low,
but not revered,
anonymous.
Yeah, not respected. It was like it would be seen as stooping to a certain level in order to hire them.
I'm gonna call him Ishito now.
Catchy.
Ishito. Yeah, right. So after this conversation with her son, which poor boy, she has the conversation with Blackthorn where he asked her to stay for him.
For me, yeah.
But Yabu in this conversation, right? This is so interesting. Yabu and his poker face was magnificent, and he was still funny, and I don't know. His character is fantastic, but in this part, right? It was just he didn't understand the poem. I mean, he did add comic relief to this episode.
Yeah, I think that's what his role was in this episode because, gosh, they knew that they were going to gut all of us.
Well, two things.
Let us thank him.
Yeah, it was a welcome.
Oh my goodness, yeah. But poor Blackthorn, like seeing his character development throughout this episode and throughout the series has been really amazing because he completely now is understanding everything that's going on, and he's so respectful of it. He is he's finally supportive to Mariko in the ways that she needs him to be supportive. Even in this scene when he like asked her to live for him, it wasn't in an ignorant way, which is like the first. That was nice. It was a silver lining of everything, but also still very tragic that, if their love story, I think, is like really tearing people apart.
You think so?
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't watched the episode, but I immediately, like, as soon as the episode dropped, I saw so many articles about, like, the headlines of people, like, having huge problems and just, I don't know, impacts, like, from their love story. And so I was like, okay, I need to get on this now.
What are the impacts?
That it's just too much, like, this love story and how it's, like, actually... I mean, I guess kind of what I'm saying, like that he's there for her. Like, this is true love, right? It's not like it's a deeper type of love. It's not like anything else that we are used to seeing, because it's true camaraderie and support and empowerment in this very unique way that doesn't involve like sexualization.
Which was a big change from the book. Like I told you, they've been sneaking around for a long time at this point. And I think I've been saying, hopefully out loud on the podcast, that this is a better way to do it. Make them come together right before it's all over. I was shipping them the whole time. So
I really agree.
Yeah.
I think I really love the way that they portray the story here versus the way you've described in the books, because I think it just reinforces the depth of Mariko's loyalty and her discipline, versus that if I'm constantly watching her like sneaking around and doing stuff, it does make you feel like she could deviate maybe, because that's a very serious crime that sounds like she's constantly committing in the books, of this infidelity or this relationship with him. So the way that they portrayed it in the show, I think, honors her integrity. We did have that one beautiful episode of how they introduced the physical intimacy and revealed what the relationship was. And then bringing all that back here to honor like her final days was so fucking beautiful. It was very heartbreaking and really sad. But even when he said, if you don't do it for these things, do it for me, I did not think for a second that she would do that for him. I was like, she's not going to do this for her son, dude. So
New guy.
Yeah. So like, you know, and she's been so steadfast. So maybe that part would have been more believable if they did include the continuous relationship where we could see where she might have found like a new light within herself. But because they didn't do that, that particular line didn't land much to me, because I just looked at him like, that's like weird. Like, you don't even know her.
Oh my goodness. I mean, they've known each other a little while.
I know, but I'm saying like, you don't know her if you think that she actually would.
I don't think he thought. He just knew he had to ask. He knows. He knows. And I think this was just one of those moments, like, because you see him just really stepping up and being supportive of her like crazy. And we saw that there was one part, when Yabu started like getting in her face in this conversation, he stood up and like defended her. The whole dynamic change shifted. And so he definitely has been supporting her and how she needed to be supported and backing her up, but in an empowering way, you know, not just like fighting for her anymore, right? Like he tried with Buntaro, but instead just helping her clear her own path. And so I don't think he expected her to do anything like that. I don't think he expected her to not do it. But he knew, I think, how it would hit to her. And, you know, she did smile and she did tear up. And so did I when he said that. And it's because that's his way of telling her that, like, he does love her, that there's someone out there, like, who has whatever they have shared is something that, like, she has not had with anyone else ever in her whole life. The only other love she had was with Lady Ochiba. But that's a sister love is not the same as, like, this, especially not even, like, as an adult in general. So I think that he was mostly just being there to say it because he knew he would regret it if he never did, because he needed to let her know that he, like, how he felt about her. And, you know, that's when they touched again. Didn't they have like a hand holding moment?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really bold. A really bold moment for her to do that.
Well, to your point, Gabby, he offered to second her seppuku, which is...
That's later, too.
Well, but still, you wouldn't necessarily think chopping your head off is supporting you. But in a way, killing her, rather than her killing herself, lets her not have to commit suicide within the Christian faith.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's love.
Saving her.
Yeah.
That's real love, because you know that he didn't want that to happen, obviously.
Yeah.
But
he couldn't stop what she was going to do. So that was the best he could do at that point.
Yeah.
Exactly.
This episode did show a lot of those really sweet moments. And I guess that's like their way of catching us up on what their dynamic or their interactions have led to be. It's the creation of this relationship, what it looks like. Like, I really loved the conversation with Lady Ochiba when she has to do the translation, and she's letting him know she wants me here to translate, but it's a ruse, so just let us talk. And then he's like, okay. And then she just like, and then they just go back and forth together. And I thought that was like really, really cute. There's lots of like, that's very sweet. There's just lots of moments in real life where you just kind of need like, I don't know, that you just have that kind of trust and support. Like, he didn't try to fight, he didn't try to argue, he didn't try to figure everything out. He's just like, all right, like, this is what you need. And then I love the conversation with Ochiba and Mariko, because I have been obsessed with Ochiba's acting. All of the episodes that we've seen her, I mentioned over and over the mannerisms, how she moves, and the way that she tonates, you know, when she's speaking is so beautiful. And as soon as like it was like translation, like now this is a conversation between us, that sister conversation, Ochiba's everything was so much more, you know, all of those polished things were gone, and it was just a real conversation on there. That was super cute too.
Shortly after that, I don't know, the first grand scene or the second grand scene, I don't know, so second grand scene, I'd say, right, where she walks with her women, packs them up, and then they try to leave.
I know they didn't have time for it in the show, but because she had taken a land route to Osaka, she had needed an escort the entire way. And that's where these men came from. And so she was on a first name basis with all those men. And like that leader had been appointed. The first man that died was a named character in the book. When he dies, just instantly, it wasn't like we had gotten to know him that much, but you know, we knew his name. We knew he had told stories about home and his mom and stuff. So it was a little jarring, but then with the carnage that followed, it was like, okay, this is a very serious scene and they're all willing to die on her command. It wasn't just a couple of guys. It was a lot of guys.
This was like my favorite scene. I probably spent a lot of time in my head having like a whirlwind of conversation about what I was watching. So first impressions is that I love the set layout. I love the bird eye view and that they are in multiple different sections. And then there's like a ground level and there is a top level. I love, like Gabby was mentioning, the cinematography was exquisite. It was so brilliant. It was so fun. I felt like I was watching the same kind of intensity as like 300, but then I got like a realistic rawness of, I won't even give a comparison of anything other than what we continuously have seen in Shogun. And the costumes were so cool. The full gear samurai stuff, right?
Yeah.
So freaking cool. And then I think that she does address them by first name in this scene too. And the way that she was commanding it all was really strong and like scary a little bit, right? Scary of like seeing Mariko, you know, having like such a, like that kind of power and just being able to easily say, kill him.
And he just goes and does it.
And it was such a cool death. It was intense. Anya was watching this with me and she was just like, whoa. So the fighting scenes, the gore, and like the just everything, the makeup and everything and what they used for the whole scene from start to finish was so freaking cool. It was just perfect. All of it was so perfect. And I kept thinking in my mind, like, man, this is definitely part of the plan. This is an intentional thing. All of these people fighting for Mariko knew already that they were going to die before this scene happened. I think that's the impression I have, is that they knew that this was like essentially a suicide mission for them, but they had to carry it out all the way through until they reach like whatever their goal is. Did you kind of get like that sense that they might have known? And then, you know, because I was just feeling so sad for Mariko too, that she knew, she definitely knew, if they all didn't, but she definitely knew that this is exactly the procedure and strategy she needed to execute.
They didn't know as much as she knew, but they know that their lives are Toranaga's to command and that she is acting as on Toranaga's orders. So I guess that kind of like trickles down to them, the same duty that they would owe Toranaga. And so under that kind of philosophy, maybe today more so than other days, they knew that their chances were probably higher of not coming home because of the situation with the... It's an open secret, you know, that Ishido had taken the other noble families hostage, and so were they, even though they weren't being called hostages. So to try to leave, because they'd done it before, right? Some of these same guys had probably been part of the Toranaga exodus earlier in the season.
Did you think that Mariko was trying to provoke them to kill her in this fight so that she wouldn't have to seppuku later?
I think she wouldn't have been upset with that outcome. I mean, she did go after, what was it, like 9 or 10 guys with that naginata. She even fucked up a couple of them before they teamed up and blocked all of her blows and tired her out. So I think she was hoping to provoke an attack that would have gotten her.
It seems like there's this plan. My guess is that the plan was that she needed to die, period. And so the strategy one is, upon trying to exit because they were denied the request to leave, and that she was hoping to provoke them to hurt her at that point.
That would have been just as good. Yeah.
So Gabby, the question was, Do you think that Mariko was hoping or expecting her end to have occurred in this scene?
I don't think that she wanted it to happen that way. I don't think she expected it to happen either. No, I think she was hoping to like be let out so that everyone could just forget about Ishido being a ruler, right? And just overrule him and go that route, like with Toranaga, which is like the empowerment route instead of the hostage route. But I do think that she anticipated this happening exactly, other than like the very end. I don't think she expected getting the permits. I think she expected like having to seppuku.
Yeah, all of those outcomes where she dies in the name of standing up to Ishido's captivity are all the outcomes she was expecting and kind of hoping for.
I don't know. There's part of me that was hoping that that wouldn't have to happen, because she did say that she didn't want to die. She said she just didn't want to like be controlled, and she wanted to redeem her name. And so if she had like stood up and they had let her out, I think she would have been pretty happy, like going back to Edo.
Yeah, well, she's been, kind of cruising for this excuse to not be alive anymore.
Right, but she did say that it's just because she didn't want to be with Buntaro.
But she would have to be with Buntaro even if they 100% succeed through everything.
Not unless he divorced her, and maybe he would divorce her because she finally let him know like how she actually felt. It wasn't ever about death. So, I mean, she would have options. He could divorce her.
I don't know. I feel like the scheming that Toranaga, has been molding her and having her restate and refocus on her stuff. I think that this was always like the only thing, was the absolute, no doubt about it, legal reason why he can now retaliate against Osaka. And I feel like it was, you die trying, like leaving after you've stated and proclaimed officially these things and made it very clear to a wide audience of you need to go. And I felt like option one was just die trying to leave, because that's like been the MO this entire season. And then because that didn't work, it was like, okay, so now I have to do the seppuku, because she couldn't overcome them to be able to get the death that I think she was trying to seek in that scene. And then ultimately why she ended up following through at the end, as we saw, because the goal had always been that she needed to die as Toranaga's under Toranaga's rule, for like it legally on paper to give him all of this like authority to do what he's going to do.
No, I know. Like, that's the strategy. Like, I know that I do think that was the strategy. That's Toranaga's strategy. That was like what she expected to happen. But I mean, the question was like, do I think that that's like what she want? Or I guess my answer was that I just don't think she was hoping for that, because she did seem like she had a will to live. Like, she showed a lot of relief when she didn't have to seppuku. Like, so again, she was prepared to die, very obviously, but she did have lots of moments where it seemed like she was really happy to live. So again, like, I totally agree that strategically this is like one best case scenario for Toranaga. But either way, Ishido was in checkmate. That's how I saw it. As soon as Mariko showed up and like gave her position on and her plans on what she was going to do, and Lady Ochiba explained to him, because Lady Ochiba is brilliant, and so is Mariko, right, that like this is a lose-lose situation no matter what. Because like either he allows her to leave and everybody leaves and then no one takes him seriously and then they uprise, or she doesn't leave because like she commits seppuku, she's a martyr, and then everyone's pissed off because she is like a very high class, like royal person. So even though she is disgraced, like that's a big deal. So anyway, yes, I understand that. But again, this was checkmate as soon as she walked in there, which is very much Toranaga's MO.
The ninjas, everyone knows Ishido sent them, or they will know next episode, but he still has, I guess, a layer of deniability where he's not going to admit it,
Like, oh no, ninjas?
How disgraceful. No way, Jose. So he does have that, can be like, oh, it's just rogues broke into the castle. You never know. We'll have better security tomorrow.
Yeah, which is really funny and such a bad, like, story to tell because all the regents, like, everyone is there. Anybody who would hire them are there and they're hostage, like, they're taken hostage. So I don't really know. This was a bad move, but it was a move. And I guess any move is better than no move, according to him.
Well, that's why I think that Ochiba stands a good chance of taking him out next episode, because from here to the end of the book is almost like nothing happens. It's almost like Mariko's death was actually kind of effectively the end of the interesting part of the book. And so they have a free hand to come up with whatever they want. Here's a fun thing. Toranaga spends, I don't know, half of the remainder of the book anyway, just talking to people. Like Fuji, she would like permission to go kill herself. Okay, you can go do that. Sure. Bye. Buntaro, he says, I heard that my wife was sleeping with Blackthorn from the servants in Osaka. Can I finally go kill him? I don't know. This is the difference between Toranaga in the book and in the show, is that he says, oh, that? I granted Mariko a divorce a couple days ago, so you're all good, buddy. She wasn't cheating on you because she wasn't your wife anymore, so just carry on.
Ooh.
Oh, man, love him.
That may still happen in the show, but if it's just Toranaga doing like this victory lap of just talking to people next episode, it would seem kind of like a letdown, since they've said they're not doing season 2. There's no more material to go off of, at least, from a historical fiction standpoint. That's why I think something more interesting like Ochiba taking out Ishido and maybe some battle to be seen. That's where I think we might be headed next time.
Yeah, that's how it does end, right? Like, they have to burn down Osaka. But that's going a little ahead, because I did want to bring up, I thought it was important seeing her, be Lady Maria with the priests again. And then they prayed.
Oh, that was a great scene, that kind of cross-cutting between the confession and Blackthorn disrupting that rock garden with his perpendicular line.
Right. So that I did not look into, but I want to know what you think about that.
I think that's just standing up against the system, like the norm. For some reason, I was thinking of that Green Day song "Minority," like when he drew that line. It's almost like he was kind of understanding the importance of what she was doing.
Her disruption. It was causing a disruption.
Yes.
Yeah, that's foreshadow for sure. This is like what's going to cause a chain reaction of like the fall of Ishido's attempted reign, or his reign, definitely. And right, so that's representing such a strength. And then her confession, right, when she was with him, with the priest, it was so vulnerable and sweet and sad, because they've known each other so long. They emphasize that, and it's just, he was her best friend. Like, he was actually her best friend. And all of the touching that we've seen has been like a couple of times with Blackthorn, and then she's allowed to touch the priest. And so there's that energy transfer, that love, that vulnerability, that just every emotion that she's repressed, right? When she confesses and she touches the priest's hand, she's passing it on to him. So we've seen him advocate for her thus far. And I don't know, at least me, I hadn't obviously didn't have really context of it. But I think after I saw this, it 100% made sense that he really, really does love and care about her. And all of the times that someone was, questioning whether he was playing one side or the other. Yeah, I definitely understood that his loyalties laid with her, because they are completely best friends who respect each other so much for so many years. It was 14 years now, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was another important, powerful, sad scene paralleled with Blackthorns. And what a goodbye.
That's another time shift from the book. That took place in Edo, I think, that confession, where they had started building the church, and so they had consecrated the ground And so it wasn't really a church. It was just like holy ground. And so they did it there. But that would have been weeks prior. So not nearly as dramatic as doing it on this day.
Right. So the next scene was when she was preparing for her death. And it made me think of maybe this is, it kind of exactly how it went with her father, right? Because Lady Ochiba says that Toranaga is like the one that convinced him to kill Lady Ochiba's dad. When he did that, he had to have known that he was going to like suffer a consequence, especially if it's the way Lady Ochiba is describing that Toranaga said, like, you really have to take one for the team here. So I don't know. It just made me sad that it seemed like they were trying to imply that like this lineage's purpose was like to be the causes of the chain reactions, like the link that just breaks it all. And it was just really sad because she's had an entire life in existence, like of shame and consequence because of this really admirable, difficult thing that no one else could do, but everyone wanted to do and then punished him for it. And I feel like she's doing it again, but obviously it's going to be a different outcome because she's like cleaning her name. Though to me, I just like could imagine the parallels. And I was just thinking of like how she must have felt like obviously very connected to her father doing this thing and this time doing it a little bit more right. And so that was just, I don't know, when I was watching it, I thought this is absolute bullshit. Like, this is wrong. This is an injustice, but also completely beautiful storytelling.
I've been saying that she's fine with dying, but she was making sure that the clock got to the point when it was definitely nighttime before she started getting everything ready.
And she was shaking.
Yeah, well, I mean, who can blame her?
Yeah, this is where this is like her outfit, her clothing has changed drastically from what we saw earlier. So now she's like in the plain whites, and yeah, it was really sad seeing her. And I did have like my hands covering my mouth because I was like, I cannot handle seeing her seppuku herself. We just saw it very raw in the previous episode from Hiromatsu, and I was like, no, they're not gonna give me a Mariko, like what make me watch Mariko's guts come out. So I was so relieved at this point.
But her son was watching, so that's super, super rough. And then when that man, I think she did the Christianity route. Obviously it was because she wanted to like leverage or obligate the regent to join her so that he felt compelled to be angry and then uprise against Ishido after this. But him not showing up, gosh, definitely expected, right? Because he's a coward. But so sad. I had tears just streaming the entire time, just thinking like, no, this is fucking stupid. I just like kept saying that out loud and I wouldn't turn my face. So like, this is not happening. And then when there was no second, I just like visualized. They didn't even have to show me. I visualized like what that was going to look like. And it was horrible.
I could not handle that. And I was so grateful for Blackthorn for recognizing this mercy that she needed, because it was like you saw it in her face. And I feel like after she learned that the regent was not going to be seconding her after all, she became more shaky. And it's because now she's like, fuck, now I'm going to have to go through like this horrible pain longer. And I'm also now damning my soul to purgatory. So that was really the most loving gesture Blackthorn did for her, knowing that like he also didn't want to have to like see or do that.
Please wait until I have fallen. I was like, what the fuck does that mean? What is she planning on doing? Like, how is this gonna look? I'm like, I felt like he was thinking like, I don't know what that means, but yes, no questions now, because he's always known for asking questions.
Honestly, I also was really concerned about his ability to be able to decapitate her in one shot. I was like, God, I'm
I mean,
really
it's a
not
sharp-
interested in this scene.
Yeah.
Well, but he is not skilled in
Right.
this and using the proper ways of like the force and angles and everything that make those cuts so efficient. He's not like that. We saw him just 2 episodes ago, just
Maybe
like
he learned. Maybe Yabu did teach him in that time. I was hoping.
I think it's a technique, and like, if you think about Inez, I'll talk to Inez about this. When Ned Stark had to do that, right? When he took out the gigantic sword. Remember how big that sword was? He could barely lift it, right?
Well, those swords, those are totally
he's talking to
different, though.
Inez.
No. The actual sword is a lot heavier. It's not as sharp. It doesn't have the angle. Like the katana is like the most effective sword that there is. So it is a bit different.
It is. But unless you're used to it, then I would bet it seem a lot lighter. Because he's used to a cutlass, but that's not a head chopping off sword. That's just like a keep the borders off my ship sword.
Yeah, I think it's more of a force thing because, like those samurai swords, like you can just drop a piece of paper on it and it'll slash it. So as long as he has a force behind it, I think the katana is going to do plenty.
All right.
I mean, it just also shows like the way that they do their like cuts and everything. I don't know. It just kind of looks like a specific kind of technique. I'm sure that he would have been able to because he's a big guy. So no doubt that just from the physics
He's no
perspective,
baby
it'll
Toranaga.
have to get it done. But I was like, what if he, he
What's it
doesn't
gonna look
decapitate? What if he like ends up cutting her back?
All right. Yeah. We don't need to. Yeah. I thought about these things too. I saw them in my head. We don't need to relive that, please.
Why not? Why not?
Because there's
if
more
you and I
to
had the
come.
thoughts,
There's
the people
more to
out there
come.
listening have.
Yabu.
Fucking
Yabu.
Yabu.
Yabu on the roof drinking. Did you guys expect that?
Well, I cheated, but yes, I did expect that.
If you hadn't cheated, right?
Well, if I hadn't cheated, I mean, we had seen the messenger earlier in the day about service. And so, yeah, that was sort of telegraphed what was to come, some measure of treachery. And we know that Yabu's probably some kind of sociopath or something, right? And can go from joking around about whatever they were joking around about to putting a knife in your back without changing his facial expression.
I did like that. I did like seeing him in action because we haven't gotten that. We knew he was like a badass in terms of like warrior stuff, but seeing him being an assassin was super cool, even if it was a betrayal to Toranaga.
Yeah, but again, I think Toranaga expected it. However, geez, oh my goodness. Once again, weird relief. It was like weird relief that he provided with this. It was just like, yeah, go. Like, I don't know what you're doing, but you're doing it awesomely. And then I don't know. I was just dumb and I was in the moment. And then finally, when I realized what was happening, I felt like a total idiot. And then indifferent and conflicted because I was just cheering him on. And then stabbed myself in the foot. But Inez, I just looked it up, and apparently there's a female version of seppuku, and it involves either stabbing of the heart or slashing the throat.
Thank you for that.
Yes,
it's good info. But yeah, so the scene, at first I honestly thought the guard was sus when he comes up to Yabu, is offering him like, hey, you go ahead and go and I'll watch the stuff here. That's how I was interpreting that at first. And I think because consistently we have not been able to see Yabu follow up or follow through on his traitor like opportunities. I think maybe because I like him so much that he was not going through, but I should have known. I should have known better. And I was like pleasantly surprised in that just from the storytelling perspective, but then also like mortified because of what it ended up being. But seeing him in action was really cool. And then like how fast he like gets through everything, watching this entire assassination scene it was so dark. It was kind of difficult to to visually see everything. And I kind of appreciated that from, we're keeping this authenticness, for like, this is like how they have to like see stuff. So they gave us like a period of time there where it was like really was hard to see because how dark it was. But yeah, it was so cool. Everything about this was another cool scene. This episode was just action packed and beautiful end to end and so interesting. And I think I was also hopeful that it was done, that she was going to get to leave. And then I thought maybe they'll try to get them on the road because that's what they do. So this was like a surprise scene for me. And it was sad that Yabu was behind it.
Yeah, but then, I was confused. I even said, like, like, what is he doing? Like, just completely in denial. And then, I was reminded that, no, he literally just, like, was given a condition of being alive from Ishido. And, as soon as I remembered that, I realized, like,
we trust him to be true to himself.
It was so, but it's just funny and stupid and horrible that, like, while I'm just, like, taking notes watching this scene, I was absolutely sus, too, of that other guy. But it said, oh, Yabu drinking on the roof. Oh, I love him. He's such a chill guy. Oh, he killed the watchman. Good job, Yabu. And then that was it. Nothing more. I was just crying. And I didn't stop crying until well after I finished watching. I just couldn't stop crying. It was horrible. But the rest of this episode was just so traumatizing.
I am in agreement with you. Also, my notes I had written down there was, was Toranaga betting on Yabu to betray him as expected? And I absolutely think so. I feel like this was a fail safe. I know you mentioned that there is the chance that they could do this without Mariko having to die, but I honestly felt like for Toranaga to execute what I think he really is planning and scheming to execute is this big deadly force, and you really he lost his best friend and mentor to this, that I felt like her only job was that she needed to die, period. And so I was like thinking that maybe she actually was trying to in the first round, and then didn't happen on the second round. And then this was the fail safe, was Toranaga knowing and counting on betting on Yabu doing this.
Again, I mean, it was checkmate. So no matter what had happened, whatever the outcome is going to be, like, would have been the same thing. Like, the regents would have lost respect for Ishido and then teamed up with Toranaga.
I don't know that it would be as intense if it wasn't for like this death in their face that is like, you all tried to leave and you all are going to die just like this. And it's especially now that it's like this ninja style that I just learned is the lowest of low kind of way. Thanks to you two sharing that. I don't know if they would be able to accomplish their fierce, angry reaction if it was like just a diplomatic thing of like, well, you let them go, so we demand that we can go, and then we're all like gonna go now.
I mean, Lady Ochiba said that was the case.
I know, but I'm saying that Toranaga, I don't think he really wanted that option anyway. I just don't think that that's intense enough to make a big stride and movement in comparison to blood spilled right there.
We don't know, right? Like, we'll never know. All I'm saying, though, is that I don't know if this is like a back and forth argument or something, but all I'm saying is that it's was not. Like, no matter what, it was just chess. There's no wrong answer. Like, Toranaga already won. And that's it. Like, this way that it happened, like, it could have happened any other way. She didn't have to get exploded. Like, she could have died earlier. She could have died during the assassination attempt. She could have died on the way over there. She could have gone there and then come back to Osaka with the prisoners, all of that stuff. Like, there are infinite ways. And yeah, no doubt that this woman was meant to die. Like, that's what they were alluding to. If she hadn't have died so soon, In real life, I don't think like with as far as like her story. Okay, so I guess one thing that I should point out is that historically her death was the significant game changer, like historically. And so, Paul, you're talking about how after she dies nothing really happens. Well, yeah, I mean, maybe that's kind of true to how it went. Like nothing else needed to happen because that impact that her death had just caused everything else to just fall into place like naturally.
Well, there was an added element from the book that's missing here, which was compelling everyone to get to or stay in Osaka, which was beyond being hostages, was that the emperor was going to make a stop in Osaka and had asked everybody to come for this celebration of some kind. Although the emperor holds no actual power, you still can't turn down an invitation from the emperor. So that was kind of like an extra motivation, obligation. Yeah. When he said something about the permits, when he threw the permits at her and he said, it doesn't make any sense to leave and then have to turn around or whatever he said, that was the added reason for not having to do so, which was that the emperor is going to be here in a couple of days anyway. So why bother?
Yeah, he also, I think he did like allude to that though, about what you just said, like the element that was missing, because he did say that like they were invited. Like he did mention they were invited and like, how dare you just like want to leave when you were invited? That's like disrespectful. Mm-hmm. But no, Inez, as far as like the story, how the story goes with this, like what they're coming up with, like, I don't know. I'm just saying like strategically Toranaga, like he already won. But yes, like I 100% agree with you that her death had to happen in order to make like a huge impact, because also like that is backed by history. I mean, we don't know if historically, like if she had lived, if something else had happened, like if it would have played out the same. I do think that it would have, because Toranaga like already had chessmate. But no, as far as what actually happened and then what they wrote down and the impact that it made, yeah, unfortunately, she had to die. And would you have preferred, I mean, what do you think about the effectiveness? You know, whether it was like in seppuku, like when she was supposed to seppuku, or at the end, like how it played out in this episode? Would it have made a difference to you, like as a viewer?
Well, dying in this attack is going to have a couple different things that's maybe different than the seppuku. There's going to be these witnesses that are going to say that she died like barring the door. There's going to be witnesses saying that Blackthorn defended her until the last second. And I think those things might continue into casting further shame onto Ishido in the next episode. Like if there is this plan to have a finale episode without any actual armies fighting, then it might be because his power is just completely sapped thanks to the shame that he'll absorb from this blatant attack.
Mm-hmm. I do like this. I think that the way that she ended up dying ultimately was the better way to go. I definitely did not want to see her seppuku. I do see the impact of that, and it's such an official kind of thing that it would have been clearly documented in all of their legal paperwork of how it went down. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I'm sure that is exactly why Ishido interfered and decided to go the ninja route instead. This explosion gave her what she really also wanted or needed, which was like fulfill the mission, and she doesn't have to worry about her soul in purgatory. And that was really important to her because her faith ultimately is what helped her like keep taking steps forward to this moment.
Why do you think the writers went this route versus like what I guess historians say happened, which is the seppuku?
She did the seppuku in history. That's
yeah.
What
maybe just because the book, like, did the book go this route?
Pretty much.
Do you think they just thought this was a better ending?
This ending involves Blackthorn.
Oh, true. Yeah, I forgot about that. Oh, so Inez, I think I recently fact-checked myself. And yeah, so apparently Blackthorn and Mariko, although they're both real people, they did not really cross paths in real life. So yeah, Paul, I guess, answered the question because it involves Blackthorn, and that's like what the show is about, is their imaginary love story.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I do appreciate the story because we got to learn so much about the women's role in this very misogynistic society, and got to witness a lot of like that rawness, and just like he introduced the little bits of something new and different that helped her carry on to show like this, the humanization of who she is as a individual outside of just being this like tool being waiting to be used. So it was really beautifully done.
Do you think that that's what James Clavell, or no, Michael Clavell? Gosh, I keep saying James.
James. Michaela
James?
is the consultant on this, but James is the one that wrote it.
Related to him at all?
Gotta be.
Yeah, right. That's a unique name. Anyway, okay, so James. Yeah, so I wonder if that was his intention. I mean, no. Paul said that wasn't. Paul said that it came the opposite route. Okay, interesting. So Paul said that he wrote it this way because he was after World War II, and you have to like be careful about like introducing, I guess like cultural stories during that time. But,
well, without a way to sell the book, right?
Right. Yeah, that's important. Exactly. But now, I mean, I like that they're doing the same thing, but just through the other perspective, which is the true Japanese and female perspective. Because you're right, Inez, if we had seen this play out like more historically based, then we would not have had those intimate human moments like from these women, because they were only allowed to be vulnerable, I guess, like with each other. And even then, they really held themselves accountable. So I guess like having a foreigner around is the only way that you could see more layers peeled back. However, do you guys think there was any significance to her stabbing herself in her heart, considering she has 3 hearts?
Paul and I consistently are very poor on the symbolism.
I know, I'm so sorry. Sorry. I know, I'm so sorry. As I was asking, I'm like, I'm sorry.
But I think it's a really good point to think about, because she is so poetic, and they make a point about putting a lot of poetry around her identity. And we do know this about her in one of her very first big vulnerable moments on the show. I think one of her hearts is her duty to Japan. Her second one has got to be Blackthorn. And then this third one, what is this? Is this like her inner self who died already so many times, and she's been like longing for it? Or maybe it's like you were saying earlier, like her will is changed, and that's why that struggle was so hard for her to follow through, aside from it just being like a terrifying thing to have to do when you like really don't want to have to do this, right? I'm sure she's been cut with knives multiple times at points in her life, and she's like, man, this really fucking hurts, and I don't really want to have to cut myself right now, especially in front of her child, with that paper wall, so he can still hear everything. It's so sad. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really know. I mean, I'm sure that there is. I feel like it's kind of obvious, but I also not really sure how to articulate it.
I think you just did, and I think you did really well. I mean, so what I gathered from what you said was that the third heart was the one that we don't know. You did give like some ideas of what it could be, which at the end of the day is like, will we ever know what it was? Probably not, but we know that it's gone now. That's always going to be a mystery. She's a bigger mystery than Toranaga. Like, it's all those things, it's none of those things, it's all those things and more. So that's what I got from what you said. I think you articulated very well, and thank you for your response. Well done.
Really, nothing more needs to be said. She she nailed it.
Here.
Yeah.
Oh, man. But yeah, I just kept thinking that Anna Sai, like, she needs to be nominated and awarded for this role.
More. I mean, I need to see everybody more. This acting is
it's the best. It's the best acting across every single person that I've ever seen in any collective body of work. I feel like it's just phenomenal.
Even Sopranos had like one bad actor. And that pissed me off. But you know what?
AJ.
Got knocked out. Yeah, this is... And even The Godfather had a bad actor.
Talia Shire.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you doing my dirty work, Paul. Now let's think. Lord of the Rings, did that have a bad actor? I'm naming the masterpieces that this is grouped in.
No.
It didn't have a bad actor, but it did have one inconsistency, and this show has not had that. So this one takes the cake so far. It has to be like my favorite show, which, I mean, Rome. Did Rome have a bad actor?
I never watched Rome.
Oh my. Okay, moving on.
We're
We're gonna
get
have to
into
talk
that
about
right now.
that later. Okay, so anyway.
So what's next? What do we expect is going to happen in the finale?
I don't give a fuck.
She's out, guys.
This is a 9-episode season for Gabby, I'm afraid.
You know, that
Yeah,
third heart.
that's what I've been saying this whole time. The third heart was me.
No,
And
third
I'm
heart was
gone.
Gabby.
Goodbye. Fucking bullshit. You know what? I'm just going to say that the Falcon comes to Osaka and burns the place down.
The
I hope you
Millennium
appreciate-
Falcon or some other Falcon?
No, his Falcon.
Oh.
Toranaga's Falcon.
Millennium Falcon
It
is
was-
so cool, though.
It's just I was just a reference to my favorite part of Game of Thrones, which was when the dragon showed up and did
Burned
finish the
everything
job.
down.
It was my favorite. I know it's none of your favorites. It was my favorite.
I really,
So-
I was fine with it.
I'm gonna appreciate you. Thank you. Oh, okay. Sorry. The credits. The credits. I think we have to quickly just bring up the fucking credits. Like Yabu hesitated. Like, what? Why did he hesitate? Do you think he hesitated because he knew they were doomed? Do you think he hesitated because he was scared that the wall would blow up? Do you think he hesitated because he was like, no, I'm trying to kill her because I'm like doing this for Ishido? What was that hesitation? And you know what? Did he hesitate for the same reason that Blackthorn hesitated when the roles were reversed at the beginning? Did he just like really admire Blackthorn? Like, what was that about?
Ooh, in that moment, I genuinely believed that he was doing this for Mariko's execution. We've seen him be a really tough motherfucker and in episode
He's a brave
1
shit face.
and he's a brave shit face. Last episode was how he was described, and then here he is like, oh no, like, you need help. I can't help you, I'm scared.
He's only
That's
got to make
not-
it look good, right?
He,
Not be good.
I hope we like see Toranaga do something to him. Like, something needs to happen to him.
Well, then I will not tell you what happens to him.
no.
You will when we are not recording. But yeah, I mean, when she turned around, when she told him, like, just let it happen, and then she gave her speech, I mean, I do think that Yabu, I don't know, I feel like in that moment, Yabu was even taken aback and couldn't believe that it was happening. I think that Yabu was trying to actually survive, even though he was not a good guy in this. I don't know. I'm dumb, and everyone's a good actor, and I'm a fool.
You just still Twitter painted with Yabu. I get it because he's
I'm
been
not,
one
but
of my
I think
favorite.
that I think that she was just. I think that what she did just caught everyone off guard. I think he expected her to be executed a different way, but I don't think, because he's been really examining and trying to learn about death, and the reason he's been doing it is because he wants to know, or what I think is that he wants to know, like, what he'll do in that situation. And the last episode we saw him see Hiromatsu, and that, like, he was completely shocked and like traumatized, like seemingly like just taken aback from that. I don't know about traumatized. I don't know if anything can traumatize him, but I think that he didn't expect it, and that was, what he'd been asking for, or like boiling people for, right? Like, finally he got what he wanted to find, which was like some kind of like power, admiration in their last breath, right? Like, he wanted to know if it was even like possible for people to like not be weak in their last moments crossing over. And this is the very first time that we saw that. And then he saw it again with freaking Mariko in like I don't know, like a more intense way. So I think he is taken aback because he is obsessed with the moments before death.
Well, that was a very busy scene in there. They didn't have a lot of time to collect their thoughts and their bearings before the ninjas blew up the door. But so I don't know if Yabu had it necessarily like his scientist hat on just yet. It may register in the aftermath after his ears are done ringing what he witnessed. It probably will, given how he thinks about things, actually. But in the moment, nah. I mean, they were only in there for like a minute before it went to hell.
Yeah, before Crimson Sky. But the credits, the last episode and this one, they ended it with, or no, even with Naga, right? With like the rainfall. Like, it's just so effective.
I just looked up some like online about like what does Crimson Sky mean for Shogun, and some people are saying that they all thought that it was like the big battle that was going to be the siege of the castle in Osaka. And then there's people that are saying that it's referring to the sunset, which is the time that Mariko stated that she would be ending her life.
Yep.
Sure.
That's the beautiful thing about art, right? There's no wrong answer. Sure, like that's what people thought. Like we all thought that this was going to be a huge battle, but again, historically, like this is what caused a shift in the power dynamic. And then like with all the regents and with Toranaga, like gave him the edge on this. So she is a really important player. So I mean, I honestly think they chose the word Crimson Sky as a title just to throw us off. 100%. I mean, they have burning arrows in the fucking credits, so we've been waiting for burning arrows to like burn down Osaka, and it just like hasn't happened. But I do think that it's, again, that this is the beginning of the end, and the end has to do with fire.
That's your prediction? Next episode?
They have to burn down Osaka. I don't know if they're going to do it because they really are just like throwing shit off. But Osaka gets burned down. The palace gets burned down. So I hope that they come to Osaka and burn it. I hope that those arrows in the credits make full circle at the end. And they probably will, because this amazing show does a fantastic job at foreshadowing.
What about you, Inez? Fire? Other things? Dog poop?
Yeah. No dog poop. I haven't seen a dog yet, I don't think. I think this is the trigger for continuing the Crimson Sky plan. So maybe this is part of Crimson Sky, as well as the siege that I'm predicting that we're supposed to see in the finale. I'm hoping to have this really cool epic battle, and I'm curious to see how these cannons play a part. And I think you mentioned, Paul, that the cannons is like something that doesn't exist in the books, right?
No. Yeah.
Right. So that'll be like fun for readers to get to experience a little bit of a surprise as well from that perspective. I'm expecting continuation of great graphics, maybe some of the final stunning costumes. And I'm sure that we're going to see some important like names like go away forever. They're going to die. I don't know who they are, but they're going to. Maybe Yabu might be one, because we've kind of been loving and like sus of him. And maybe that would be like an irony. I don't know how he can get like past this. I imagine that Ishiru will, if push comes to shove, we'll just say that, Yabu was the one who actually ordered these ninjas. Throw him under the bus that way, maybe.
Do you think that maybe Yabu will try to redeem himself with Toranaga when he sees that Toranaga is winning, and Toranaga will allow him to fight for him? No.
That's a great question. It's a great
you're
question.
Useful.
Because they did like this piss brotherhood agreement kind of thing. Right?
In
they
the
peed
sunrise,
off of,
right?
Yeah, they peed into the sunrise, guys. So I don't know.
I appreciate you remembering
question.
that. Thank you for that reference.
It just seems like a camaraderie type of dynamic there. But he also, Toranaga knows Yabu very well. He knew that Yabu was going to leave and do this after Hiromatsu seppuku. He already knew it. So I feel like this would probably be his final, like, I already knew you were going to do this and you did it. And like, you got to go kind of finale. I don't know how he'd have to let him come back or keep his fiefdom.
No, I think he might let him like die with honor somehow for him, for Toranaga. I think be like, okay, cool. Like, I won't kill you, but you'll have to do this to kill yourself. So Buntaro's historical person was a humongous, I mean, he's just like the ultimate warrior. And I think that he was a huge player in like defeating Osaka. Again, like I think they're like historically they're mixing the timeline up a lot, and but I do know that like Buntaro is important. So like I do think that next episode we're gonna see him. Obviously, like he's gonna be upset Mariko died. So I just hope he's not like hating on her. I hope he'll appreciate her for that. Even though the last time they had a conversation, she just said the worst thing you could say to a person, I think. So yeah, we'll see Buntaro. I hope that we see Yabu try to redeem himself. Again, I think it's because historically they're mixing up two. There is a battle that's supposed to happen, and the battle was supposed to happen like in a valley, and then several years later, the Osaka castle burning down happens. So I think they're just mixing everything up and coming up with their own story. And so I just think like the key players are probably Cannon, Blackthorn, Buntaro. So that's my guess. I don't know. I don't want to watch it.
We'll tell you about it. Oh. And a final piece for me that shifted. I think the last two episodes I kind of was wavering on what I understood Toranaga's purpose or real intention to be. That maybe he's like really doing this like for himself and not necessarily for protecting the heir. But after this episode, I am so devastated by Mariko's death and all that she had to go through for all of this. And then it makes me reflect even harder also on like Hiromatsu and Yoshi Jr. I'm going to revert back because it feels dishonorable to Mariko that I can't accept anymore that he's just doing this for himself. I'm going to just say like, yeah, okay, he actually is like on like the same mission that he's like been telling us from day one. He's just is a ruthless, like, you know, ruthless, strong, like kind of guy, because that's just what the leadership requires in this specific time frame. But I just can't. I don't think I could emotionally recover if this was like all some kind of like pretentious, selfish scheme and she just really kind of died in vain. I can't accept it anymore.
It's not that. It's not that. Throw it out in the garbage. High, low, high. High,
it's got to be Anjin shooting his shot and it works out for the moment anyway. Low, it's got to be Mariko dying, even though it's got to be that way. It still sucks because I liked her character. And the other high would be the big choreographed fight scene. Not the ninjas, but the attempted leaving of Osaka Castle.
Okay, so my high is the entire episode. I was obsessed with costumes, makeup, the scenery, all of like the filters and layers of what they do to make everything just look so freaking perfect and beautiful. The juxtaposition of everything, like the people, especially during that fight scene that you're talking about, Paul, when they had to like people on the top level had to like walk over to see what's going on in the other room because of the movement on the bottom. I just really love all of that choreography of and cinematography. Lows, I want to say that I don't really have any lows for this because I think this is like the best episode to date. I keep saying that to myself like every week that I'm watching it, but this one just had everything. All the acting on point, all the costumes on point, all the storytelling, the emotions. It had all kinds of emotions. They gave me laughter, they gave me tears, they gave me cringe, they gave me anger, they gave me fear, everything, and it was still just such full of symbolism and beauty. So I'm not going to really pick a low at all for this. So the high for me is just everything. It's my favorite episode.
My first high is all the general choreography, like the movements, the walking. We saw a lot of Mariko like in her, robes and just showing like her footwork, and we had the gliding happening, but now we got to see like how she has to move her feet in order to like keep the robe from like stepping on it and everything. I don't know. She just moved with such like intentional grace that also was nothing like we've ever seen before, because again, she wasn't submissive. She was just powerful. So that was incredible. That scene, though, with the fight scene, I think what I really loved about it was seeing her stand perfectly still. And I think her standing perfectly still during that is like when the tears really started flowing and never stopped, because it was so incredibly beautiful, so powerful, so symbolic. But again, the production team, I can just imagine like being part of something like this. And it was just overwhelming, overstimulating, incredible art. My low, I know I said 2, but we're talking about her movement. That's, I guess, my first high. My low is fucking Yabu providing comic relief and hope to me. I think I would have preferred like just feeling intense and depressed and sad, but no, like he made me forget, and then boom, like I just crashed harder each time over and over again. So I don't appreciate that, Yabu. And then finally my last high is, I guess, like the never ending tears that happened like 30, 40 minutes, an hour later. I don't even know. I had to like look at puppies and take a nap because I could not stop. So the fact that it was that impactful was just incredible. And I am, like honored to be watching this as it comes out during this time, right? Because the first series, like the first miniseries, did really well. And this one is just doing the times justice. Like, I'm so happy that we have this technology, that we have like the respect is like being given to this story that it deserves. And so I'm just such a fan. I'm not gonna watch the next episode. It's over for me. That was too much. I don't know if I'll like recover from the next one. So anyway, that's that. Thank you.
Well, so she'll just join us next week, Paul, as just like a spectator.
She'll
be a
just be
spectator
listening
sport session for her, like
to you and me, go back and forth, like, oh, this happened and then this happened. She'll be like, really?
She's like, fuck off.
Nope. Yeah, I'd be like, no, it didn't.
Oh, man.
Well, thanks for joining me for a rousing podcast on the 9th episode of Shogun. There was a lot to learn, especially with all that symbolism talk. Gabby is a steadfast instructor for our rigid minds, Inez.
Inez did so well.
I passed, Paul.
She did. I
She
admire
just talks
Inez.
smack, but she's got it.
She does.
It's just you.
It is. I'm lagging.
So next time you'll be the other.
I'm the anchor of the Erasmus.
Like, welcome back. I'm other, and here's Gabby and Inez.
I'm here, but then Gabby and Inez.
Right.
Take it on.
He who shall be remain nameless, and Gabby and Inez.
I like this. Go on.
All right. Well, if you like this podcast, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to it on iTunes or Spotify or YouTube or wherever you found this podcast so that other people can find it, thanks to algorithms and how that stuff works. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for listening. This has been an original Pod Clubhouse production. Pod Clubhouse is a podcast network dedicated to encouraging collaboration among podcasters and friends to bring a fresh voice and diverse perspective on a wide array of content. Please visit and leave a comment for us at podclubhouse.com. Rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast feeds on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find us at Pod Clubhouse. Our DMs are always open, and we'd love to hear from you.